Okay, good morning, and thank you all for attending our CARM Q&A session with us. I'm Maria, the Marketing Manager at GHY, and I will be monitoring the webinar today. We will begin with a presentation on the upcoming changes with CARM, key points to help you prepare for the final release, and provide other value-added opportunities to take advantage of. We will then proceed to move into the Q&A session to address as many of your questions as possible. So here's how we'll manage the questions during the Q&A to keep things organized. First, if you'd like to ask your question live, please use the raise hand feature by navigating to the top of the Teams window to the meeting controls area and select the little hand icon. I'll call on people in the order that hands were raised. Once I call on you, please turn on your microphone and video to ask your question, then turn them off again when we've either completed answering your question or after you've asked your question and have nothing further to add. If you'd prefer not to speak live, that's okay. You can type your question into the Q&A discussion area, and you can access this by navigating to the meeting controls area and clicking on the Q&A icon. I will alternate between live questions and those in the chat, making sure to address everyone in turn as best as I can. Please be patient as I go through the questions. If you have any follow-ups, feel free to use the chat again, and I'll do my best to answer as time allows. After the session concludes, we will be sending links to access the recording of the session and a copy of the slide deck. Our speakers today are Dewar, GHY's Executive Vice President, and Bruno Biondi, our Vice President of Canadian Operations. So without further delay, we will now move into the presentation, starting with the agenda.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks everybody for being able to attend. Our goal is really to get to the question and answer session, but in order to do that, we felt it most important to do a quick overview of the journey and the current state of where things are at with the CARM program. We imagine many of you have and were on the Standing Committee on International Trade sessions that have been held, most particularly the one last night where it effectively did say CARM's a go, and it's a go starting blackout period starting tomorrow. So with that, it's important to know that CARM has been in the works since 2010, but it does happen to be going live with that blackout period as of tomorrow. We're going to give the brief overview of the what, the why, the when, and the how. CBSA is basically their assessment and revenue management program that does allow importers to have a direct connection and a window to the importer. You see here that being the portal, of course. That portal access provides access to all transactions under the importer's BN, regardless of how many service providers may be involved in the process. Provides importers with certain self-serve capabilities, as well as payment abilities and reporting capability. Next slide, Maria. And though I don't like to read off the slides, it really is about just streamlining the importing process where you do have, as an importer, the ability to view the trade activities. CARM is about a direct connection with the importer and CBSA. Brokers have a role within the context, but it really is that importer connection. Next slide, Maria. So in addition to opening the door up to that importer, CBSA is also being able to tighten things up. They've really been working on sideload systems for many years that didn't create them the greatest of opportunities in order to target compliance. You hear and see here we have our Getting on Board with CARM white paper. Anybody wanting background should take a moment later to download that white paper to see how compliance and risk management does in fact connect with the CARM program as it is. Next slide, Marie. CARM is, of course, transformational. We've heard that time and time again. Again, CARM was in the works since 2010. Like, this is 14 years for CBSA to put a program forward that they've been working on directly or indirectly since 2010. You're going to get that better reporting, the ability to control revenue management, but the importer has to be involved with that, and that's part and parcel of the client journey that we're going to be making reference to. They do pledge, and they haven't been able to do this until they got everything onto a single system. They do pledge once this next release, which is now called Release 3, once it goes live, they pledge that they will have updates twice a year to make the program better, and not dissimilar from what happens with other types of software programs that we're accustomed to. Next slide, Maria. Okay, we talked about the long journey. This provides a little bit of a visual to it. We thought we'd go live in 2014. Deloitte, they wound up engaging a third party in 2018. We're supposed to go live in 2021, 2022, 2023, and now we will be going live in 2024. So the difference between some of the launches that took place, because we did have a launch in 2021, the Release 1 launch. Release 1 provided some visibility, but that visibility was merely to the statement of account. Release 3 that will be going live effectively on October 21st after the blackout period comes off, the 16 to 17 days of bringing the system back on, that will provide much greater functionality for the needs of the importing community. Next slide, Maria. So what we talked about as far as what did happen in May 2021, in many ways, not much, but people did have the ability to register. They did have ability to delegate things to their service providers that needed that capability in order to account on behalf of importers. They did have the ability to finally look at their statement of account. Many importers thought they knew what a statement of account was because they received things from their broker, but it was incomplete because some importers use more than one broker. They may use a courier, they may use a freight forwarder who happens to be delivering something on a delivered duty paid basis. And as a result, an importer never really had a complete visual until May 2021 when they started registering in that fashion. And they have had that ability since 2021 to now to get that visibility. Next slide, Maria. But the real functionality, the real visibility comes in 2024. You will see a whole lot more information. You'll be able to get different formats, different reports, different types of consolidations. And the single greatest change from the broker and importer community is currently when you're making payment, it's usually the broker. It's usually the broker's bond that is guaranteeing payment. As of tomorrow, all payments are connected direct and only to the importer's business number. So any of the people that had previously been resting on a broker's business number or a broker's account security, that's effectively disconnected as of tomorrow. Next slide, Maria. So, there's been a lot of talk on the blackout that does start tomorrow. What's most important, I believe, to the importing community and quite frankly, all supply chain partners is that there's no impact on release. Any shipments that have been being released for your business, regardless of what state of readiness you are, will continue to be released tomorrow and onwards. And on October 21st, when the CBSA turns the lights back on again and the portal is open to importers and has this new functionality, we'll talk about some of the changes that occur. But at that particular time, the difference between importers that are prepared and importers that are not prepared. And when I say prepared, I mean that you've registered on the portal and that you've delegated to the brokers that are processing releases on your behalf, you've delegated them authority. That authority allows them to account for shipments on your behalf. If that delegation step hasn't occurred, what is going to happen on October 21st is that your shipments are going to sit there being unable to be accounted for until the delegation act occurs, or until you basically almost rekey what the broker has done for you in the act of release. What CBSA has done, anticipating that not all people are on the portal, or not all people have delegated accordingly, or in addition to that, some people that were really early adopters, they got on in 2021. They're the people that got them on the portal, they've left the company. And so there are certain disconnects that are going to exist in that. So CBSA has ensured that in the first 90 days, there's going to be no late accounting, penalties, or interest. And they're providing 180 days for importers to be able to post security, to have that relationship that previously was there for importers, but it was primarily used by the brokers. And they're also providing the ability for importers to be able to work with their customs broker if they have to leverage the customs broker's business number during this particular transition period.
I'm just going to interject one quick thing here. So although the across functionality and release is still going to be there throughout the period, importers should be aware that effective Saturday evening, about 10 p.m. till Sunday at 8 a.m., there is a complete blackout as far as the across system is concerned, and we go to contingency planning, which is all paper releases. So if you can just plan for that period, because there will be that 10-hour outage where release will not be effective electronically.
Thanks, Bruno. Next slide, thanks. And the thing about CARM, in comparison to all other CBSA programs that have taken place, and there's been many programs that have occurred over the course of the last 10 years or even previous 10 years. In the case of CARM, 100% of transactions are being impacted. I guess 100% of transactions impacted outside of post. I think post is not impacted per se, but all other transactions are impacted. All types of clients are impacted. Customs brokers, self-importers, CSA. This is the biggest change in CBSA's history, and there really is no workaround to it. But the positive to this is by CBSA getting everything on a single system, when and as they adjust the system, everybody's going to benefit from that versus the previous siloed approach they've had to be working on. Next slide, Maria. So speaking of changing processes, I think it's important to, and credit to the Canadian Association of Importers and Exporters, where they've worked on certain decisions that importers have to make in regards to process, in regards to planning as it relates to the people within their firm and how that interacts, whether it be in payments, in posting of financial security, in the registration and delegation, or any types of visibility and statements of work or standard operating processes that you would have with a third party, whether that be a customs broker, a consultant, or another type of supply chain partner that is part of your import process. Next slide, Maria. So the business account manager, everything, I'm almost going to say they're the single point of accountability to CBSA in regards to what's happening with your with your imports. CBSA will be sending notifications, whether it be a notification of a payment requirement, whether it be a notification of them looking for information, whether it be an audit, whether it be anything, it will all come through the portal going forward. What they have said all the way along, and credit to them for saying this, is that importers should have at least 2 business account managers, or they call them BAMs. By having that backup, if one person leaves, at least you've got another sitting there. The challenge and next slide, Maria. The challenge, though, was that many people didn't necessarily have two BAMs. And if they got on the portal and they didn't have really much use for the portal between 2021 and now, what happens? How do you get rebammed, for lack of a better way of putting it? I don't think that's really a word, but I'll go with it for now. And unfortunately, the only way to do that is to contact the CBSA's help desk. There is a rather lengthy process in order to get that set up. And after you've done that, only that BAM, that person can look after delegating authority to the customs broker or the parties they're looking after release on their behalf. Some businesses have said, and this would be a little bit of, for lack of a better way of putting it, a sales plug. Some businesses have said, like, I really have no interest in monitoring this portal or keeping aware of what CBSA is wanting to communicate with me. I'd rather if my broker did that because they've done that for me all along. For businesses that are like that, GHY, as do many other brokers, they're offering the service of being offering a portal management service. It's a little bit more involved because it's more than just delegating to your broker to be your broker to do the accounting. It's really delegating to your broker to almost be an employee of yours, which is always what we were really from as appointed through our general agency agreement with you, but it's strengthening that and it's making it electronic. So anybody that's interested in that particular service, I recommend you contacting our CARM help desk after this session or at some point in the future. In addition to that, you don't just have to be the only role is not a BAM. There are other roles with lesser visibilities or capabilities within your business. You can appoint program account managers, and program account managers, they have a lesser visibility and they also have lesser functionality. So they couldn't, for instance, appoint somebody or delegate somebody in order to process transactions or confirm transactions on your behalf. Next slide, Maria. Can't state this enough. If you don't delegate the person who has released your shipment, who has to be a customs broker, a licensed customs broker, because those are the only people under the Customs Act that are capable of processing shipments. If you don't delegate them, they will be unable to account for things on your behalf, and your shipments, or not your shipments, your accounting forms will just be sitting there, and they'll be sitting there for the first 90 days, not collecting any interest or late accounting penalties. But after those first 90 days, after that particular transition, you'll be incurring liability as a result of accounting being incomplete. At least you'll have your goods released, but that would be the issue in that regard. To give people comfort as to what delegation actually is involved, there are different levels of delegation. Delegation could be limited to just what the customs broker has submitted on their behalf. It could be more encompassing to what has been submitted to by the client and or other brokers. Like, so there's varying levels of designation within that. CBSA has various process manuals as well as a 220-page playbook that explains this in more detail, and we'd be happy to share that with you for anybody that doesn't have that or needs access. Next slide, Maria. So what happens after the blackout? October 21st, CARM becomes the system of record. Importers then are no longer, and pardon me, as of October 4th, importers aren't really connected with their broker's bond or release prior to payment anymore. So they need to get their own type of security in order to have shipments release and then be able to account and pay for them at a later date. CBSA, as we alluded to before, has provided 180 days in order to get to that. And I guess, you know what, Marie, can move on because I think we'll cover it a little bit more. There's two types of options as to what type of security to post. One is a cash deposit, and that cash deposit has to be 100% of whatever your largest month was in the previous year. And the other type of option is an acceptable form of security, which is primarily going to be a bond, and that could be posted by 50% of whatever your largest month is. And the difference between what the importers have been accustomed to or brokers have been accustomed to pre-CARM is pre-CARM that was usually based for resident importers just on the duty outlay. Post-CARM R3, that's based on the duty and the GST aggregated together. So your highest particular month from the previous year needs to have either a 100% cash security deposit or a 50% type of written security agreement, which is likely going to be a bond arrangement. And most brokers right now have been looking at calling their importers or connecting with their importers that they represent to ensure that security is going to be in place sometime between October 21st and 6 months thereafter. Next slide, Maria. Some people are going to be saying, well, what's that security amount? How do I figure that out? And I use multiple brokers, so how do I put that all together? Well, those people are going to be really happy because when they key in, if you can be happy keying into a portal, when you key into the portal and go into the financial security area, it will basically tell you how much security you need. And that assists you by seeing that calculation performed in that fashion. Next slide, Maria. CBSA then, as we talked about before, it's all interconnected to your particular business number. They have the ability to monitor after that transition period to ensure the security level remains appropriate. And they in turn will be, and their favorite word, or one of their favorite words is a nudge. If you're getting past what's an acceptable level, they will nudge you. And those nudges will be received through the portal and the business account manager, whether that be internal or a third party that you've appointed. They'll have to be working in conjunction with that in order to make sure you're at the appropriate level. And CBSA will also be, of course, using the portal as reference to focus in on compliance. Next slide. We'll see with CARM a harmonization of billing cycles. Presently, the various types of releases and business processes could have multiple types of cycles. Now they're all coming into sync as to a single cycle. Options will still exist as far as payment goes. You can pay direct or you can pay through your service provider. In most cases, I haven't talked to any broker that isn't offering that service. The challenge would be that if you happen to be using more than one broker, any payment that you make to a party and that party makes on your behalf will be posted against your oldest debt. So that could create some challenges when you look to reconcile shipments. So we could receive a payment, we can make that payment on your behalf, but it could be maybe applied against shipment or shipments processed by United Parcel Service or Federal Express if that happened to happen in that case. Our approach has with our customers happens to be just sharing the options that exist, pay us or pay the government direct. And all in all, right now, maintaining status quo, particularly over the transition period, to eliminate confusion as to who should be paid, the broker or CBSA. If a process is in place right now where you're paying us and we in turn are paying the CBSA, we're keeping that status quo. Or if you're paying CBSA correct, that's direct, that's status quo as well. Next slide, Maria. This is merely a visual of the billing cycle for some people that like to see how things work as to when's good release, when accounting is needed, and when payment is due. Next slide. One of the largest changes happens to be the change of format that we're working with. People will have been accustomed to for years the B3 form as far as the import coding. The CAD is now replacing that. The CAD is much more granular. Quite frankly, the lines aren't consolidated. So for those of you that like to print things, you're going to be using a lot more paper looking at the CAD than you would have been accustomed to in looking at the B3. Next slide, Maria. And this here is a visual of the layout of what a CAD looks like. The summary happens to be very clean for displaying of the totals where you see on the left-hand side. But if you look on the right-hand side, you're potentially just going to be seeing two lines of information, and those are commercial invoice lines versus a consolidated line to the tariff classification. So it's going to be very involved as far as the visual goes. Next slide. There will be efficiencies here for sure. Before we had a B3 and a B2 for B3 for time of entry and B2 for adjustments after the fact. Now the CAD is the all-encompassing form, whether it be at time of release, at time of correction, or at time of adjustment. People in the trade would speak to the fact along the line that things often got misplaced, or if you were sending information into CBSA, things didn't get processed as with there's certain lacks of accountability or gaps that existed. Well, now everything's electronic, so there's no way to hide behind I didn't get that. It's instant, and statuses will be completely transparent to the importers and CBSA, and with appropriate visibility to the brokers as well. Next slide, Maria. Bruno.
So what CBSA has introduced is we're now going to have a correction period. So within the correction period, it's basically we finalized an entry. So if we're using today's terms, we've got our K84 or our SOA, it's been issued, but we still have a period that we can make adjustments that will appear of where they are. So you get a correction, you've made a correction, they'll be auto-approved. So the new version of your CAD will be auto-approved. You can continue on your merry old way. And then once you've actually paid it, that's when you get into adjustments. So the new correction period is there to kind of help us along. Because we're now talking about versioning. Yeah, next slide, sorry, Maria. When you take a look at versioning, the portal will keep all versions. So you'll have the ability to see what the original version and any changes that you've made to it. However, you can only adjust the most current version. So you can only take a look to see what's going on in the current one, but you have visibility to everything that's happened historically against that actual transaction. Next slide. So within the portal, you get a little bit more as far as reporting is concerned. So when you start taking a look at what your transaction history, what kind of, where your payments are due, what's there as far as declarations, you now have the ability to get what historically has been called a firm report. So you can see or request a list of everything that's happened on your account prior to CARM, as well as being able to see what's going forward within CARM. Next thing. And this is just some useful resources that we have. So we do have the GHY CARM page. It'll keep you up to date of what's going on, how it is, a number of user guides, white papers, trade updates, anything that's kind of there to assist you in understanding what's going on with CARM and what the newest update is.
And now here we sit. Maria said, guys, don't speak a minute over 30 minutes because we want to have the next 30 exactly for questions. And Bruno and I would like to just point out the time for you, Maria.
Yeah, you guys are bang on. I'm impressed. Thank you very much. All right. So with that, we're going to move into our anticipated Q&A session. To reiterate, you can ask your question live. Just use the raise hand feature. I'll call on people in the order that the hands were raised. Once I call on you, please turn on your mic and video to ask your question. Then in turn, turn them off again when we've either completed answering your question or after you've asked your question, your choice. So if you prefer not to speak, of course, you can type your question into the Q&A area. So I'm just going to jump into we had some come through the chat here. So I'm just going to put them out there as they've come in in order. So the first one here is I need some clarification on the GST direct program that will be discontinued when CARM is fully released. So our broker have the monthly remittance service MRS option. The last GST statement we received was on September the 25th. The statement was paid direct to the receiver general. We are now registered in the CARM portal. So how can we go about registering our GST direct payment with CBSA? Note, I've gathered that our Canadian broker will still provide us with the usual statement of account that they filed to Canada Customs on our behalf.
All right, so I'll give you a couple of answers from that. So your broker will probably still be providing you an SOA. That SOA is generally going to be only transactions that the broker has filed, unless you have authorized the TCCU to provide an electronic SOA on behalf of the importer. So if you haven't done that piece, the SOA that you're getting from your broker is only going to contain their transactions. If you use multiple providers, whether it's a courier, another broker, you might be missing out some of the information there. As far as because you're registered in the portal, you're able to see all of the transactions are going on. And because CBSA has the portal as your system of record, what they're saying is what the SOA shows within the portal is what is due at the end of that month. So you got to ensure that you are making the payment fully for that amount. But as far as the direct security program or GST agreement, they are all eliminated because the importers are truly responsible for all duties and taxes that are assessed against their business number.
Thanks, Bruno. Great answer.
Thank you. Okay, so there is a question that's come through about the blackout period versus the official release 3 date. So can you just go over again what the difference is between that R3 official release on October 21st versus the blackout period?
Well, so what winds up happening is Customs' current system, their current accounting systems, needs to be shut off in order to bring all of the information, the past information, into the new CARM program. So their accounting system and their release system are two totally different systems. As a result, when they turn off their accounting system, they're not impacting their release system. So the releases will continue. They're holding the releases in abeyance until they turn the new accounting system on, and the new accounting system, of course, being CARM. Did that answer the question sufficiently?
I think so.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Thanks so. All right. So can a broker run reports for a client via the CARM portal, assuming that the broker delegation step is complete with full access? Meaning, could a client have the broker run a report that reflects all trade activity regardless of the service provider?
Yes, that can occur as long as the visibility exists. The limitation, and I probably should have referenced this better in what I was dialoguing, what's in a broker system really relates to the importing SKU by part number and relationship in that fashion from their products. Whereas in the case of the portal, it will be much more descriptor based. It will cover all of the lines, but it won't necessarily cover the part number. But to answer the question, we absolutely can run, or a broker absolutely can run if they're appropriately delegated. And I would suggest they would have the ability to, within their own system, if they were looking after all of your imports, marry that up to the particular part numbers that may be important for your particular costing types of reports or analysis.
Very good. Thank you, Al. Okay, so regarding the prompt of getting close to the credit limit, how do we see what the limit currently would be or is?
So the limit would be based off of the type of security you've posted. So if you've gone with a bond, you'll know what your bond amount is. And when you get closer to that 75% is when they'll start their nudges. I can't remember exactly when if they will officially stop when you've gone over or what percentage over you're allowed.
Well, certainly in the transition period, I don't think they're stopping on anything. And if you go into the portal, you actually do see how much, and not dissimilar from, and I don't want to say this too much, but not dissimilar from my visa. When I get to a certain level, you get prompts and nudges, so it isn't unlike that.
Gotta watch the visa, that's for sure. Okay, so payments on the portal are for a maximum of 5,000, right? Is that correct?
Well, pardon me,
No.
4,999.99.
All right, all right. Specifics are
Oh, hang
important.
on. Payments via credit on card on the portal. That was the
Okay.
question. Because you can pay up to 10 million, I think it is, on the portal if you're paying using your bank. But if you're paying using a credit card, it can only be just below the 5,000.
Okay, okay, thanks for that detail. All right, so I'm just going to jump over into, we've got some questions in the chat, and we've got some questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to jump over into the Q&A here. So there's a few questions here. We'll go with the first one. Do we have to delegate to couriers, or can we use that as an opportunity to tell them to redirect to our chosen broker? It's a good question.
You absolutely can avoid delegating to the courier and use that as the option to direct it to your chosen broker. Absolutely, that can happen.
Perfect,
The
thank you.
caveat I would add to that is if the courier does release something on your behalf, as the account owner, you are responsible for the confirmation or final accounting of that release that the courier doesn't have the authority to confirm on your behalf.
Great point.
Perfect. Thank you. So on our CARM portal, it shows that we are not enrolled in RPP. Will that update by the go live date?
Yes.
Perfect.
And you'll get that benefit for the 180 days. And after that, when you need to get your own bond, or as you get your own bond, you'll have to adjust it, or the security or surety provider will adjust it accordingly. But to answer your question, yes.
Good. Perfect. Will I be able to correct the commercial accounting declaration quantity or value that was created by a broker?
Yes.
Perfect.
The part I'll add into that, if a importer is self-correcting on the portal, just note that there is no notifications that go back to the original filing broker that a change has occurred. So our recommendation is to advise the broker that a change occurred. That way they can update their system for any reporting requirements that you have, SOAs, etc., just to make sure that the system is as accurate as possible.
Perfect. On that note, with the CAD, for record retention, is there a way to download the CAD from CARM, or does the broker need to supply the finished version?
Yes, you can download the CAD from CARM. Under the new regulations, a broker needs to provide you with the transaction number that it came with. We're no longer required to provide you a full copy of the actual document.
Very good. Okay.
To add to that, note that CBSA does not deem the CARM client portal to be a sufficient record keeping. So it doesn't meet your record keeping requirements to have your CADs in there. You need to have them available elsewhere.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for that detail. Can you please expand on the approach to CARM that couriers will have? What is your recommendation to avoid delays and comply with timely payments for imports done by couriers?
Well, if a courier has processed a shipment on your behalf, they should have authority to have done that. If they have authority to do that, you should either delegate them in order that they can appropriately account for it, or I would imagine, but I shouldn't imagine, but I would imagine one of the things they may opt to take advantage of is the transitional period where they can account for things under their own business number. In relation, they might have released it for you, but they can account for it under their business number during a 1 year period, as could we during a 1 year period until we get things sorted out in that regard. The the problem from your standpoint, if you let them do it like that versus delegating them, is you're going to be missing the full visibility of accounting under your particular business number. And if you need access to transactions that related are related in that fashion, you will effectively lose that from a portal standpoint and an ability to file for refunds or adjustments, etc.
Yeah, really great question. Really great answer. Thank you. So what is the acceptable payment method for the cash deposit? Is it a debit, credit card, or EFT through banks only?
All of those apply as far as making that payment. The one thing to note, if you're making a cash payment, the cash payment is on hold, so they don't use it to offset that. So it's not just continually adding in. You literally have to pay in addition to that cash deposit that's sitting on hand.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruno. If you apply for an RPP bond, you also have to outlay money for the amount of the bond, not speaking of the broker's fee for the bond.
No, when you apply for a bond, you effectively work through, and most brokers are providing support through that. You effectively will be working through a surety company. The bond it will not relate to the value of the bond. It will more relate to the risk affixed from the particular surety organization. Again, most brokers have, as do we, have things set up in that fashion that the amount of a surety bond is it's very minimal and will not be problematic to your particular business requirement.
Perfect. Thank you, Al. Okay, I'm going to grab another question from the chat here, and then I'll go over to those who have raised their hands. So I'm a non-resident importer. What is my responsibility with the CARM system?
The same as a resident. As long as you're acting as an importer, everything is through the CARM portal. So you'd still have to have your RPP. You still have to be delegating the appropriate brokers. Everything is pretty much identical to a resident versus a non-resident.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, I'm going to call on Mary Barrett here. You've got your hand up. Please go ahead, turn on your mic, turn on your video, and ask your question.
Hi, Bruno. Hi, Al. There's just something about the RPP bond that there's just some things about that I'm just not quite clear about. I understand that it will show up in the portal. And how does customs know that the importer has their own bond? Like, I don't recall a form. I don't recall customs asking us, do you have a bond and how much is your bond for? So how does customs find out that information? And then the second part of that question is, if the importer is using the broker's release bond and they're switching to their own importer bond, how does customs know that they have that other importer bond, that they now have their own release prior to payment bond? And it is my understanding that that release prior to payment bond, which used to be issued at the 9-digit level, now is going to the full 14 with the RM extension. So will the portal show the amount of bond for each program account that the importer has, and the amount of exposure against it and the amount of availability on it, all within the portal? Like, will that all show like in a chart somehow, or on a grid, or a bar chart would be nice?
So the simple answer is yes.
Okay.
It will show on
Thanks.
the portal, but the piece to remember is if you have a bond currently at your BN9, you need to allocate it at the BN15. So as you allocate those funds, it's each RM will have their own saturation. So if you, argument's sake, have $100,000 and you split it against five and you went 20,000 across the board, and one has 25,000, well, that one RM will be over, and you have to actually either reallocate or get an additional security to bring it back to an appropriate level. So the total cumulative under all your RMs no longer matters.
Right. It has to go RM by RM. And
And the way
will they
that they're
further
getting,
divide it out into the amount for duty and the amount for GST? Because on the bonds now, they say you're covered for this much duty and you're covered for this much GST. Will it still be divided?
no, it is true security as far as the duties and tax, whether that's a duty and excise, a surtax, etc. You'll take a look that way, and the communication that the CBSA has with the surety companies through their API is how they're going to know that the bond exists, that the surety has actually done it, and what the total amounts of it are. So if you have a paper bond today, the recommendation is more than likely from the sureties, cancel your paper bond and issue an electronic bond so you have the electronic communications with CBSA.
Ah, okay. And will you do the allocating by program division with the bond provider against each RM extension, or will you do the allocating in the portal? Will the business account manager do that allocating within the portal?
My understanding, it's the business account manager that would be doing the allocating within the portal. But to be honest, Mary, I'm not 100% on that. And that question was asked at the Canadian Society of Customs Broker conference, and surety wasn't 100% at that point either.
Okay. So we should be communicating, but regardless, everybody gets this 180-day grace period, right? So
absolutely.
So no releases will be affected, but sooner or later, we'll have to be chasing the bond provider to find out if they are providing that electronic information to customs, because that's the most effective, efficient way to do it, is to have the bond provider provide that information to CBSA electronically, right?
That's exactly what Bruno said. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Sometimes I have to paraphrase. Thank you.
No worries.
Thank you, Mary, for your question. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move on to some of the questions in the chat. We'll keep going here. So does GHY complete the CAD, or is it the importer that completes the CAD?
GHY.
Thank you for that clarification. So how do we know if we have designated or delegated for GHY to make payments on our behalf, or if we were supposed to make the payments direct?
Whatever your current process is what's continuing onward unless you advise otherwise. So if you're currently paying GHY, continue to pay GHY, and we will continue to pay on your behalf. If you are currently paying the government direct, some of our customers are paying, as an example, the goods and services tax direct and the duty and brokerage fees separately to us. We're keeping all of that status quo until people request otherwise for whatever reason.
Perfect. Thank you, Al. Has CBSA advised on any timeline in terms of response time for any accounting issues importers might have? No, last time I was in touch with them, it took 3 months to respond.
I would suggest that's on a case-by-case basis. They've got a really good ticketing. I shouldn't say really good necessarily in response time, but they've got a really good layout in ticketing as to how to make requests for things so that it hits the right people. We can provide that information offline after the fact. We've seen things, anything from very expediently to the same thing that the questioner had made reference to. It's a bit hit and miss.
Okay, good to know.
But at least there's one on the one plus side, there's one channel And like the channel in is through that particular help desk or ticketing system, and at least there's traceability and accountability within that.
Yeah, very true. Thank you. Will importers continue to receive those daily notices from CBSA?
Daily notes? No,
No, yeah.
no.
Okay, thanks for confirming that. Well, so where in the CARM portal exactly can we find the financial security deposit applied to our company?
You will see that once R3, I keep wanting to say something else, once R3 launches on October 21st, when you go into the portal, you'll see that area specially selected there. I think it'll be what the second drop-down tab. It won't be visible and functional until that time. So hold on for 3 weeks.
There you go. If I understand correctly, the broker is delegated the same way as an employee in the CARM portal. Yes. If this is correct, does access have to be delegated to individual contacts at the broker's level, or can it be delegated in such a way that anyone from the broker will be granted access?
So when you delegate authority to a broker, you're delegating a firm. From the firm's access, we delegate to our associates what access or what customers we're providing. If you wanted to delegate your broker as a employee of your company, they would need a complete separate logon, complete separate everything, and that's when you delegate them. So there's two separate spots for delegation. One is as an employee, and the other one as a firm, whether it's a broker, consultant, etc.
So the
Perfect.
first part of the question that was asked, no, it's definitely separate, and that's what Bruno had made a reference to. It's not the same. The second part, Bruno nailed it.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification on that. So GHY is our broker and has always paid GST on our behalf. We are registered on the CARM portal. We have delegated to GHY to post security on our behalf. Is there any other further action that is required from us for future shipments?
You're a dream customer.
That's from Serrano. Okay, and next here, so more of a comment. Did I just hear that correctly? That CBSA's own system is not regarded as sufficient record keeping location for importers?
Yes, you heard that correctly.
Okay, so we'll go over to question from Tata Steele. Once the electronic application for the release prior to payment bond is transmitted and accepted, is there a LC or cash deposit needed for these bonds?
No.
Okay, very good. I'm just going to jump over here. Just give me a moment here. I'm going into the Q&A. Okay, so
The only thing I'd add into that last one is the letter of credit or cash deposit, whatever you want to look at, as far as CBSA is concerned, would be a no. Your surety may require something else.
Thank you,
So
Bruno.
your surety, in order to issue the bond, might be requiring a letter of credit or something like that. So that might be a requirement, but from a CBSA perspective, the answer is no.
Yeah, thanks, Bruno.
thank you. We've got one from Laura here. Does GHY recommend a cash deposit or a bond specifically for small importers that are under the bond minimum?
Honestly, it's going to be a case by case when you take a look at it. You got to remember the bond premiums are fairly low when you look at that minimum $5,000 security that's required. Dependent on where it is, I would probably go the bond route just for that added security of not knowing is something come in as far as a courier, gifts at Christmas and all kinds of other fun stuff that release in your name and you don't want to get stopped, again, you do have that 180-day window right now.
Perfect, thank you. So what specifically are the dates and times where paper releases will be happening? Note, I missed the time period, and do we need to let our carriers know to do anything differently?
So that would be Saturday. So what's that, the 5th? At 10 p.m. Eastern is when the system is going down, and it comes back up at 8 a.m. Eastern on Sunday. So during that period, there are no electronic releases. Our recommendation, yes, talk to your trucking companies. If you can avoid hitting a border during those times, I would avoid hitting a border during those times. It will be paper release. The communication with customs is they are going to be reviewing their electronic mailboxes, but some major ports go with what's in front of them versus taking a look electronic. So I would expect significant delays, and if you can wait and clear after 8 a.m., I would clear after 8 a.m.
Good advice. Thanks, Bruno. So does the GST payments have to be made through the portal? We currently do this through bill payment in the bank. And second to that, is this purely a financial portal, or would my shipping manager need to access as well?
So to answer the first question, you can continue to pay through the bank in the fashion you have been paying. The key requirement is that you just make sure you use the right business number with program identifier. And so if you've been doing that all along, that will be fine for as long as I can possibly imagine. In regards to should your shipping department have access to the portal, I guess that depends on whether or not you're requiring them to be monitoring any types of reports, requiring adjustments in relation to what's been received or what have you. The portal is. Can you say that better for me, or okay? So it depends. Like if your shipping person is responsible for any type of checks and balances, they should have visibility to be able to look at things in the portal, but not necessarily anything in relationship to issuing financial payments, etc. It is more than just a financial payment. Heck, that existed in May of last year, minus the duty portion.
Thanks, Al.
Or May of 2021 is what I meant to say.
Perfect. So we've got a live question coming through here. LJ, you want to go ahead and turn your mic on and video if you want?
Hey, Al. Hey, group. How's it going? Great for CARM. Got a quick question on just the CARM portal in general, access-wise. Everyone should have access to the portal, correct? So if you're delegating employees to that portal, any changes can be done, correct? So like uploading, the bond security, and then kind of understanding that security requirement for the bond after the fact, correct? So everyone should have the same level of access.
Correct.
Right? Okay. Perfect. Just wanted to just double check that going into this thing. So appreciate everyone's help with this going forward. Thanks.
Sure.
Thanks,
Thanks,
LJ.
Andre, for your question. Appreciate it.
That's probably one thing we should have mentioned when it comes to the portal. If you have not registered for the portal, please register before 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, because when the systems go dark, access to the portal will not happen from 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow until 3 a.m. on the 21st. So if you wanted to get in, you wanted to delegate, you wanted to do anything, you'll have no opportunity to do it unless you do it in the next 26 hours.
Okay, so we're almost at the hour here, but I'm going to run through a few more questions because they are important and we appreciate you guys asking them. So we have used GHY to import large goods. However, gone through the border ourselves to fill out the B3 form and pay the GST for smaller goods. Will we still be able to cross on our own, similar to filing the B3 form?
Absolutely. And I look forward to hearing what the experience is like as you come through and you're interacting with the portal at the CBSA's primary inspection lines at their offices at the border. You absolutely can continue that.
There we go. Thank you, Al. Okay, we've got another one here. So we use GHY to do some of our larger shipment clearances, but self-clear at the border, some smaller shipments using B3 and using the computer terminal at the border at paying. It's similar to it's under. Yeah, it's a similar question, but it's from a different person, and I'll just finish it off. It is our understanding that we can no longer do this at the border as of October 21st. So we will still be able to self-clear at the border by completing a CAD online in the CARM portal prior to arriving at the border.
So if you're clearing your C-type in your name, you can do it on the portal and bring it with you. The piece that's there is CBSA can't confirm the payment, so they will be collecting the funds at the time. So your RPP no longer applies on C-types when you're doing it at the border. But you do have the ability to create that CAD at the border through their systems, whether that's through a CBSA number or a CBSA BN.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruno.
Can I ask Bruno a question on that too?
No.
Come on. So wouldn't, based on the 180 days, wouldn't there be a grace for the person coming through at the border crossing?
No, because RPP doesn't matter at that point.
Okay.
You're still, it's a cash payment that's due at the time.
Okay, thank you. So the form and function exists, but the credit doesn't.
Correct.
Okay, so we'll take a few more minutes here and try and get through as many questions as we can, and then we'll wrap up. So what is GHY? What is GHY's most or biggest concern for CARM Go Live?
Okay, you know what? I think I'm going to take this, and I'm really going out on a limb right now. Presently, like we're familiar with our customers, and that our customers don't have any outstanding debt with the government, but we are aware that there's a lot of other outstanding debt with importers to the government, and when the government tries to work through the various reconciliations of that debt, and I mean old debt, and I mean a lot, I'm concerned that could cause issues with other types of shipments having to be held once these transitional periods start expiring or start being challenged, even in the form of trying to get customs bond. I really feel for the surety companies in that, they don't have any visibility to the importer's profile, yet they're having to provide or work through to provide security, and yet they don't have any visibility to when any nudge occurs or when they go over. So my fear would be as all of those things start playing out until CBSA works through some of the nuances.
It's not really a fear. Well, it's a fear. It's going to be based off of the sheer volume of paper when you're trying to review entries and to see what's going on. Because with us no longer having the ability to recap an 800 line invoice that could be a 2-line B3 because there's only 2 different commodities is now going to be 402 pages. So that ability to be able to monitor and see what's truly going on, it gets a little dicier.
Yeah,
great question.
Sure.
Thank you for asking that one.
Yeah, very good question. Thank you. That was from Lori Mota Zembert. Okay, so in regard to the surety bonds, will GHY be able to supply us with companies we can approach in obtaining bonds?
Absolutely. Contact us through carm@ghy.com, and we're diligently working on that.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll just go down the list here. For record retention, I think we already asked this one. For record retention, is there a way to download the CAD from CARM, or does the broker need to supply the finished version? So I think we already answered that.
Well, the answer is yes to both, but
thank you, Al. Okay, I think we'll do maybe one more question here and then we'll wrap up. Is there a scenario where CBSA may suspend an importer's ability to obtain a release where they have failed to account for their previous imports with a designated time period?
great question.
Failure to account, then ultimately, yes, it's rare, but they have that ability to do it today. So I don't see why they wouldn't have the ability. They'll probably even have more visibility through CARM than they would currently have, but the answer would be yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Bruno. Okay, so we'll take away your remaining questions and get back to you with answers. But we're going to mark this as the conclusion of our webinar today. We want to thank everyone for attending, and thank you to Al and Bruno for providing their expertise and knowledge to help us better understand what to expect with CARM over the next few weeks and into the future. So as a reminder, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to access the recording of the session and a copy of the slide deck. Again, we're always here to support our clients through this journey of CARM and the responsibilities of importers, ensuring compliance with Canada Customs. So please reach out to us at any point, and we're always here to help. Thank you again for attending, and have a great day. Goodbye.